Okay, so a little bit about me as well. So my AI journey started probably about 3 years ago now. So much like many of the people here, lifelong learner, curious. So the early stages of ChatGPT are what got me. So ChatGPT 3, I believe, was my first encounter with AI. When I uncovered it, it seemed like a decent time-saving tool, but nothing too groundbreaking necessarily. As the updates have unfolded, I think that's completely changed. So to consolidate that learning, that curiosity, I've been using AI, I'd say at least once a day. I'm using AI in some form or capacity now. To formalize that learning, I went and studied with Oxford Inside Business School. So a course that I would recommend also. So it featured machine learning and AI as a whole. So we mapped out the history of AI, how AI works. So I'm pleased to be able to share a lot of that with you today also. As part of that, I do want to get a little bit of a grasp on our confidence rating in the room. So if we were to say 1 is no experience, we've never used AI. 3, use it regularly, but maybe just haven't formally done any training or anything like that. Or 5, you receive formal training, you consider yourself an AI expert. If you could just give me an indication in the chat, a number between 1 and 5, then that would also be useful. So far I know we've got a mix here, primary, secondary, higher education. It'd also be useful to know what the level of expertise is, because that will determine how fast we're able to go and what we should and shouldn't deep dive, essentially. So I'm going to go ahead and have a look at the chat, see what numbers are coming in over there. Okay, 3, 3, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 5. 4, 3, 1, 1, 3. Okay, a nice spread as well. Okay, yeah, that's useful. That's useful for me to know. All right, so I'd say based on the room, we can get pretty close to the edge in terms of the deep diving AI concepts. Okay. Lastly, feel free. This one doesn't have to be typed. If anyone wants to jump in and just say the reasons for joining today and what they'd like to achieve by the end of the session. Again, you can tell I'm a teacher. I want to actually get to the heart of who's in the room rather than doing something that's pre-prepared and not tailored to you. So does anyone want to unmute themselves and just say what they'd like to achieve by the end of this session?
Learn something about AI and how to use it.
Sure. Yeah, a valiant quest. Thank you. Anybody else?
Yeah.
Hi there.
Oh, no, go on. You speak.
Oh yeah, thank you. I would like to find out some of the ways that we can use AI to find out if AI has been used, particularly by students who are tending to using AI. Thank you very much. Sorry about that.
That's right. Hi all. I just want to keep learning about it. Like you said at the start, it moves so fast, and so our learning has to move at the same pace. So I'm taking any opportunity I can to do that.
Nice. Okay. Anyone else?
Yes, for me, it would be interesting to grasp the young generation are using this all the time. So I think we need to learn a little bit more how to be at the, probably not at the same level, but I would like to see, what can I improve from my education standpoint to help them and to be aware, how to use, because it's a tool in the end.
100%. And there's definitely a disparity, as you said, by the way, between the old and young, and it doesn't have to be.
I agree.
Yep. Anyone else? Thank you for your contribution so far. Oh, all really useful.
Yeah, hi. From my side means twofold. One is that means for my school, how can that AI be used for teachers and staff for curriculum designing and means for classroom sessions, and at the same time how we can ensure that students use AI or ChatGPT in general while they are doing their homework, home assignment. So that means how we can do that, some governance on that.
Okay, yeah. So I'm furiously tapping and adapting. Sure. Anything else? Okay. Yeah, looks like that's it. All right. So I've made a couple adaptations. So most of the things that were mentioned we'll be touching on anyway today. The how to tell if AI has been used. I can put a little extra emphasis on that. Curriculum design, I can touch on it, but that one's a workshop by itself, I'd say. Especially if we put the word good in front of curriculum design, I'll say that's likely to be a workshop by itself. But yeah, well, I'll bend to make sure that we touch on those for sure. Okay. So let's move. In terms of the agenda then, you can have an overview there. I'm not going to read it to you, but we'll definitely go on a journey. We'll definitely make it education specific. We'll try to look inside and outside the classroom. We'll make sure that we're looking across ages from primary, secondary, and university, and across continents as well. I'd say would also be useful because there's definitely a tilt in different directions just based on what part of the earth you're standing on right now in education as well. So we'll have a look at the good things that are happening outside of our own classrooms and schools and towns and cities, and maybe some of the things we're maybe a bit more critical of as well. Okay, so in terms of the what is AI, this definition is always going to be quite broad depending on where you look and who you speak to. If we have a look at just a couple of the key players, so the term artificial intelligence, it goes back to the 1950s with John McCarthy, essentially, where if you look at AI's origins, the first design was to replicate human behavior and initially to try and replicate how the brain works. It quite quickly moved away from that because it was easier to get good results without trying to directly replicate the human brain. But I say this just to say there's a historical context here, as much as it might feel like something brand new and groundbreaking. Geoffrey Hinton, widely regarded as the godfather of AI, he's the one that kind of pushed through while people were calling him crazy and it felt more like science fiction. He laid a lot of the groundwork for the tools that we're able to use today and the way that AI works today. So he's worth a mention as well. And in terms of Google, which they were maybe late to the party, but they're definitely going to be a big player within the AI world. I would say there was never a threat to Google. I couldn't imagine growing up that any organization was ever going to be able to move Google. But people are moving away from Google searches to using AI as a search tool. So that was a big threat. So they've been trying to make sure and throw as much money at it as possible, Google and Meta, who own Facebook, to try and make sure that they're not left behind. So if you're seeing Google Gemini and things like that, that's Google coming through. So their CEO, Sundar Pichai, he's been saying AI is one of the most important things humanity is working on and is more profound than electricity or fire. So quite an interesting claim. Quite an interesting claim there. Okay, let's get into AI in education then. So if we look at the US, anybody here from the US, out of curiosity? It'd always be nice to lean on some expertise. Is there any out there? Okay. So slightly different education. I will be a bit UK biased today just in terms of my approaches because I'm in the UK. So K-12, so essentially we're talking about kindergarten up to 18, basically. So 67% of teachers in America have used some form of AI. So most data in terms of AI tracking goes back to about 2023. They've been a bit ahead of the UK throughout that period. Now they're only slightly ahead by a few percent. In terms of the students, 70% using generative AI. So the difference between AI and generative AI seeks to create something new, whereas AI may just be used to do data analysis and perform simple tasks, whereas generative implies it's creating something new, essentially, just to unpack that word a little bit. Higher education, that's where we see the bulk of AI being used, both by teachers and by students. So 90% of universities are using AI. This isn't something being frowned upon, this is something being encouraged. And as the gentleman was referring to earlier, in terms of plagiarism and knowing whether AI is being used, so AI tools are the best way to detect AI. It's just one of those chicken and egg scenarios where it holds a little bit of irony. But they've got quite a few good plagiarism trackers. Since you wanted it to be a topic, I would say the way it works is AI scans the web and it looks for how big a match there is between strings of words compared to, say, a student's coursework. So if online, it finds an exact match, and then it expands that to 2 sentences, and it's still something like a 90 to 100% match. That's why the plagiarism detector goes off. So it's essentially how closely a person's string of words and sentences matches with data that's already present online. Ethical issues there. I think our higher education people, you guys might be the ones to make a better determination in terms of exactly how you feel about that. Because it's not a million miles away from citations if it's small parts of text. However, I know the worrying implication is where the whole pieces of work essentially are being AI used and AI generated essentially. Okay, and then yeah, as we said, 90% of the students as well as the universities themselves over in the States. In terms of what's going on there, this feels a bit like an arms race, but in terms of schooling and education, I can probably have a little bit of cynicism attached. I think a lot of the big tech companies, their thinking is that if they invest in the development of AI within their country and they have a connection to the people willing to learn and perhaps have a talent and a knack for AI, they'll inevitably be able to bring those people into their organization. So the investments that they're making, they're not, I'd say, as charitable as they may first look. The idea is that those people will then have something to contribute in terms of the organizations a bit later on. So the White House has been setting a few challenges. Melania Trump, no less, essentially did a presidential AI challenge earlier on. We have Google committing $1 billion to AI in education, so partnering with education in order to develop AI tools and also encourage the use of AI by students. We have Microsoft partnering the National AI Consortium of Community Colleges for the same reason. And then we also have the National Science Foundation with 100 million being invested in artificial intelligence research. Essentially, whichever country develops a bigger community of people who are adept at using AI is going to be an advantage in the next 5 to 10 years, essentially. So even if it's a 10-year-old, they'll be 16 soon enough and they'll be able to code, design, machine engineer. So those are skills that countries and nations are looking to develop. That's why so much money is being thrown around there. Make sure I'm on the right page. Chinese. Yeah. Okay. So in terms of Chinese schools, this is where it gets a bit more weird and interesting. So because of the mix in China, where the gap between rural China and the city is so stark in terms of resources and provision, the numbers are a bit suppressed, so 50%. In terms of the curriculum though, since September 2025, AI education has been mandatory in China. So every child now coming through Chinese education has already started learning AI. So that's not just using it in terms of coursework, but learning about how AI works and how to integrate AI. In terms of universities, across Chinese universities, there's modules that are AI modules. So embedding AI into that specific course or module. And then there's a focus group essentially of 184 schools that have been selected as bases to lead on AI. So they're getting a lot of the funding, a lot of the resources, and a lot of the monitoring in terms of how AI is being effective and how it's being used within those settings. So quite a few interesting initiatives. This is where it gets a bit more weird. Anyone heard of the brain trackers that are being used in places in Asia? Yeah, feel free. Shout out or chat are both fine. So say that again.
No, I haven't heard anything.
No? Okay. So it's been about a year now. It was last year when I first discovered it. There's a few mini bits of reporting about it, but it's also a bit suppressed, the reporting. So brainwave trackers, essentially. So you can see the students there. So in real time, it's monitoring brain activity, essentially. This is the bit that feels, I think, a bit uncomfortable. So the data is publicly shared, meaning it's shared outside of the classroom. So teachers as well as parents all have access to the data live. So there's an app essentially. So parents, they can log in on their phone and it displays the data, but not just of their child. It displays the whole class and the whole school data essentially. So they're able to see how their child is doing on a ranked table, essentially, in terms of their concentration. And a slightly different piece of technology also, which leans into the debate of will AI one day replace teachers? So facial recognition tracking. So to gather similar data in terms of the concentration of pupils, and there's also facial recognition tracking. Feels like something that could be used for good, but I think just from a European context, maybe it just feels a little bit uncomfortable. I do have a video to share with you to unpack that a little bit.
Sorry, can I ask a question?
Sure.
What is the goal of tracking this concentration? I'm a little bit puzzled.
Yeah,
What do you gain in this?
Twofold, essentially. So one, in theory, how well a student is or isn't focusing, and when they are and aren't focusing. So I'd say this is something that we do as teachers, right? So the concept isn't alien, it's just the execution, I think, feels alien. So we want to know who is and who isn't focusing. And we may well pass on that information to parents at, say, a parents' evening or something like that. From the parent perspective, it opens up an avenue also, though. So the how was your day at the end of the day conversation, it's going to feel a little different if data on the concentration levels of a pupil are widely available. So if we wanted to look at it from a positive element, we could say we're able to identify which bits of teaching might not have been as effective because we lost a pupil and their concentration wasn't as high as it could be. We're able to see when they're most engaged and repeat that and possibly cause better results in terms of attainment if we can repeat the things that cause high levels of focus. If we're being critical, one might say it's an invasion of privacy. One might say it's an embarrassment and a shame culture. That's the background to it. But I'll let you watch the video, and I think that might help you to see what side of the fence essentially you want to sit on with that. I've got it preloaded. 1 second.
China. 蓝色是走神了。
Audio okay? Everyone can hear? Yeah, if you can, give me a sign.
Yes, thanks.
Okay, sure, beautiful.
红色是表示你的专注力显示到。
Teachers at this primary school in China
蓝色是走神了。
know exactly when someone isn't paying attention.
白色就是你可能跟网络还没有连接好。
These headbands measure each student's level of concentration. The information is then directly sent to the teacher's computer and to parents. China has big plans to become a global leader in artificial intelligence. It has enabled a cashless economy where people make purchases with their faces. A giant network of surveillance cameras with facial recognition helps police monitor citizens. Meanwhile, some schools offer glimpses of what the future of high-tech education in the country might look like.
做出选择吧 Good job!
Classrooms have robots that analyze students' health and engagement levels. Students wear uniforms with chips that track their locations. There are even surveillance cameras that monitor how often students check their phones or yawn during classes. These gadgets have alarmed Chinese netizens. But schools say it wasn't hard for them getting parental consent to enroll kids into what is one of the world's largest experiments in AI education, a program that's supposed to boost students' grades while also feeding powerful algorithms.
为了就是国家的这个研究呀、发展呀，我觉得是没有问题的。
The government has poured billions of dollars into the project, bringing together tech giants, startups, and schools. We got exclusive access to a primary school a few hours outside of Shanghai. To see firsthand how AI tech is being used in the classroom. For this 5th grade class, the day begins with putting on a brainwave sensing gadget. Students then practice meditating.
现在想象我们眉心有一点柔和的光芒绽放。
The device is made in China and has 3 electrodes, 2 behind the ears and 1 on the forehead. These sensors pick up electrical signals sent by neurons in the brain. The neural data is then sent in real time to the teacher's computer. So while students are solving math problems, a teacher can quickly find out who's paying attention and who's not.
说明这段时间他是有点在那走神的。
A report is then generated that shows how well the class was paying attention. It even details each student's concentration level at 10-minute intervals. It's then sent to a chat group for parents.
就是他可以看到每个人的评分。
The reports are detailed, but whether these devices really work and what they exactly measure isn't as clear. We were curious if the headbands could actually measure concentration, so one of our reporters tried on the device.
This is a new technology with still fairly little research behind it.
Theodore Zanto is a neuroscientist at the University of California, San Francisco. He was surprised to learn that this tech, called electroencephalography, also known as EEG, is being used in the classroom on children. It's usually used by doctors in hospitals and labs.
EEG is very susceptible to artifacts. And so if you are itchy or just a little fidgety, or the EEG wasn't set up properly so that the electrodes didn't have a good contact, affects the signal.
Despite the chances for false readings, teachers told us the headbands have forced students to become more disciplined.
上课回答我的问题，就是他们的声音会比平常更响亮。
Teachers say the students now pay better attention during class, and that has made them study harder and achieve higher scores.
上课认真听讲，作业做的基本上是全对的。
But not all students are as enthusiastic. This 5th grader, whom we caught dozing off in class, told us his parents punish him for low attention scores. And that kind of data adds a new kind of pressure for students.
想啊，如果在一次考试全班人都考了95分以上，就你考了一个85，你会不会感觉你有一种
Companies we interviewed said the data can go to government-funded research projects. We spoke to parents who were unclear about where the data ended up, and they didn't seem to care too much. Santos says there's likely no privacy protection at all.
In a classroom, if you're trying to make an assessment of an individual student, you really can't anonymize it.
Experts and citizens alike are sounding alarms about various aspects of the country's huge push into artificial intelligence. These classrooms are laboratories for future generations. And while these new tools may potentially help some 200 million students raise their grades, just how this all works out won't be apparent until they become adult citizens.
Okay. So, fellow educators, how do we feel about that as a concept, as a thing?
I would like to say that it has to do a lot with culture. Not all the cultures will accept
such a lack of privacy in a classroom, and also they're very young. So you're putting information of your child in hands of who? So I'm not too sure many countries will agree, but I think it goes along with China.
Yeah, for sure. It's only a few countries where you can say it's for the good of the state, and that's a reason enough. Anybody else wanted to comment?
The amount of pressure it will put on the kids must be absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, for sure. And I saw the comment as well about the neurodiverse children, and that, like, yeah, I saw the Black Mirror comment. Like, I completely agree. It has all of those connotations. I think the interesting for us will be once certain technology is available, it opens up the possibility of it or a version of it being used, essentially. I'd love to know what these same kids think now as it was a few years ago. Yeah, for sure. For sure. And it goes both ways, right? Because they might become outraged by it, or they might just be indoctrinated into everybody wears headsets. So it's more acceptable moving forward to also wear a headset. Okay. All right, let's have a look at the good old UK. Okay. All right, so yeah, in the UK, it's been quite a quick rise. So between 2023 to 2024, it jumped to about 40%. And then just within the last year or so of 2025, it's jumped up to 60%. So much more competitive with, say, America now in terms of the usage of teachers. A lot of that has just come with the improvement in the technology, just makes it very hard to ignore. I'd say the teachers that haven't used it are aware in some form of AI, perhaps just don't have first-hand experience. In terms of the users that have used it outside of education, 31% outside of education have now used AI. So in terms of the population, it's slowly creeping up to having an AI literate population. And government funding is a bit dwarfed compared to other countries. I'd say in terms of government specific, a bit less than half of what other countries are spending, we spent on AI. I think our government in the UK isn't quite sure which direction to run in and how fast, but they know they don't want to be left behind. So Oak Academy for a while has been an outlet for what the government determines to be teacher well-being and helping in terms of teacher shortages and such. A lot of that is directed at Oak Academy, essentially, to then roll out resources to make the lives of teachers easier. As part of that, Alia, which is basically the Oak Academy AI, which by some variation starts to feel like the government's version of AI for education, has been increasingly well funded. So in 2023, it was only about 3 million they were spending, but there's been a commitment to spend 43 million by a 3-year mark. So we're closing in on that now. I've dabbled with it. It doesn't feel competitive in terms of the big boys of the AI world, Alia, yet. The results that you can get from a Bard, a Gemini, a Grok, a ChatGPT, it's just not competitive yet. So we'll see how that goes. In terms of teacher training, so 74% of teachers haven't received any formal training. So we're kind of at a crossover stage, some dabbling, which may lead to formal training. It kind of feels a lot of the times in the UK, until Ofsted says something definitive, the direction just doesn't kind of change. And right now, Ofsted is essentially following government directive, which is just don't break the law with AI and don't breach GDPR. Those are the main messages, kind of thing. So yeah, it's not been a big push, I'd say, yet in terms of a government or Ofsted stance in terms of teachers being trained on the use of AI yet. Okay, in terms of what they're being used for, and this will be interesting to ask you guys too as well. So the majority seems to be lesson resources. So day-to-day resources for lessons, 62%. Assessment comes second. So AI, I'd say the main strength of AI in education is data and data handling and reproducing content. So it's not surprising that the lesson resources and assessments are the top two. Planning, which leans a little bit towards that curriculum design, is at 42%. I'd say I don't generally use AI for planning just because I feel like the amount of time it would take to properly train my AI module on planning for my class and the students in my class specifically, it just doesn't make full sense to me. It feels like it'd be a lot of work currently. There may come a time when there's school and education specific versions of AI platforms, so the tailoring becomes a lot easier at that stage. But that's the reason why I don't use it for planning or schemes or designing curriculums and such. But yeah, this is a moment where the expertise in the room can come to the forefront. How are we using AI as a community? Don't be shy now.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
So I do use it. I'm an ECT year 2, so I do use it to help with resources and planning lessons. It does save a lot of time, but I'm very fiddly with making sure that it fits obviously my school's policy, if it matches what I need to have in the lesson for the children. So it is fiddly, but it does save a lot of time. My mentor told me about TeachMate AI. I'm not sure if anyone's heard about that, which I do use, and it is good. The only thing about it is all it does is at the end of it does questions for them to answer, which I find a bit boring. So I do use ChatGPT. Hold on, Maya. ChatGPT to kind of do fun, engaging activities and kind of use the both of them to combine a lesson. So it makes it fun for me to teach, but also fun for the children to learn too. So I kind of adapt and use a mixture of different ones to help me, and it does save a lot of time. But that's how I use it, and obviously just trying to fiddle with different things to try and match it, suit me and my children, and play around with it a lot to help train myself in it as well.
Sure. I'm going to mess with your mind now and tell you that TeachMate is powered by ChatGPT also. So yeah, this is one of the funny things I think for us to navigate as educators. So if I were going to make a prediction, I'd say so there'll be an emergence of platforms, Twinkle-esque, essentially, that are tailored for teachers, but they're not going to have the funding to build their own AI model. So what a lot of platforms do essentially is they'll have a cosign from one of the big GPT models. It's usually ChatGPT, to be honest. On occasion, it's been Gemini. In China, it tends to be DeepSeek. But they'll license the use of a older version of ChatGPT. So if you go into the App Store, essentially, and you type in AI anything, you're going to just find millions of AI apps. But essentially, they've been licensed as older versions of ChatGPT. The last time I checked, it was 3.5, but that was last year. When I actually checked with TeachMate, I'd assume it's maybe moved up to 4. So yeah, the big platforms, they don't let them use the most current version, a bit like Perplexity, if anyone uses Perplexity. So they'll allow the use of older versions of AI models in some weird subscription merge thing at times. But yeah, this is an interesting one. Yeah, anyone else? What other uses are there? And for one more person, at least one more person, how they use AI.
I use it for checking emails and writing emails, make sure that they're correct in terms of the grammar and the tone, depending upon the type of email that I want to send.
Nice. How are you running it? Through like a Grammarly or AutoWrite or?
Just through Copilot.
Okay.
That we use on the system.
Okay.
So I also use it as well for making sure that documents that we've produced within the school, for example, our school development plan, our staff just reads right, and because it just makes it far more professional. I mean, you do have to check it because it makes changes that you might not want to put in, but it certainly saves a lot of time. I also use it as well for analysing documents. So the curriculum reviews just come out. I just put that into ChatGPT and said, pull out the main parts for me, which it did.
100%. Yeah, so summarizing is another great use of any AI tool. I'd say nowadays will do a decent job. Claude and ChatGPT tend to score the highest. Gemini's been boasting good scores for summarizing as well, but most of Gemini's scores seem to be by Google. So it's a bit of a hard one to figure out truly, but I can vouch for ChatGPT and Claude for summarizing for sure. Interesting as well with Copilot. So Microsoft, right? So at my last check, Microsoft owned 49% of OpenAI. So late to the party, they realized they weren't able to compete with ChatGPT. So essentially, they just tried to buy it, essentially. So they've bought a 49% stake. So I think they're trying to keep their brand going. But again, yeah, like OpenAI, if Microsoft believe that they're willing to buy 49% of it, there's pretty much a cosign to say they know there's a superior product out there. A little bit like Apple Intelligence. So if anyone's got an iPhone, we know it's boasting Apple Intelligence. The only problem is they weren't able to develop Apple Intelligence. So they just went to Google and said, can we have Gemini for a bit? So Apple Intelligence, it's one of those weird myths. It doesn't exist yet. It's just Gemini that's powering your Siri and these kind of things. So yeah, just a little interesting background there with Copilot as well. Okay, but yeah, thanks for that. Thanks for that. It stops it being my voice all the time, right? So useful to hear your insights. Teacherless classrooms. Dun, dun, dun. Science fiction, possibility. We're going to have to ride it out and see, I think. But countries have been adopting teacherless classrooms since 2024. You might be surprised to see some of the names on that list there. Some of the other countries, maybe not. But yeah, here in the UK, we have been trialing teacherless classrooms. I've only seen it in private schools so far. I don't know if there is some school out there that isn't a private school that is using it, but I've only seen it in private schools in this country so far. But also the United States, India, France, and China, all trialing teacherless classrooms. Let's have a look at one right here in the UK. Make sure I'm on the right page there. So, yep.
This is about to become the UK's first teacherless classroom, where 20 GCSE students will spend the year being taught by artificial intelligence instead of human teachers.
What we're attempting to do is to use AI in key subjects at GCSE. The three sciences, maths, and English, and computer science, and possibly geography.
The platforms learn what each student excels in and what they need more help with, and then it adapts their lessons for the term. Strong topics are moved to the end of term so they can be revised, while weak topics will be tackled more immediately. And each student's lesson plan is bespoke to them. GCSE students have been testing out the new tech.
Teachers don't know exactly precisely what I'm unable and able to do, whether the AI can just figure out just by a few questions what I'm weak in and what are my strong points, and it helps me develop into a much smarter student.
Although there won't be teachers in the classroom, there will be 3 learning coaches to help with behaviour and softer subjects that AI might struggle with.
They're not being taught subjects by the learning coaches, but we are covering soft skills like public speaking, debate, and the really important personal aspects of a person that you really want to bring out and develop, and turning young people into young adults.
Some people disagree and say removing teachers from the equation will harm students in the long run. Chris McGovern was a head teacher and an educational advisor to Number 10. Now he campaigns against ideas like this.
children will lose a great deal from that AI experience. They need to have teachers, they need to interact with other children, and that's fundamental. The problem with the AI and the computer screen is that it is a machine and it's inert. So you're straight away dehumanizing the process of learning. It's a soulless, bleak future if it's going to be along the AI path only.
Last year, the Department for Education said teachers are irreplaceable, and AI could never be a substitute for teachers' professional judgment and the personal relationship they have with their pupils. This school seems to disagree.
There are many excellent teachers out there, and we have many here at the college, but we're all fallible. If you really want to know exactly why a child is not learning, I think the AI systems can pinpoint that more effectively.
Mickey Carroll, Sky News.
Sorry, so we got 91 prisoners freed and we have teacherless classrooms. Any immediate thoughts?
Not wanting to jump on the exam result bandwagon, but that school have got a progress score of minus 0.4 at A level. So I'm not sure that's probably the best thing for them to be doing at this point.
Useful to know. Useful to know. Yeah. Any other?
I think one of the sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I think one of the things that probably we're missing is that school is not only about learning a subject and that the teachers were good or not good in keeping 20 students, perfectly level, but also social skills and how you cope with different challenges and peer pressure and so many other things that are happening in the classroom that I think with the AI, they're completely missing out, like the person said, our human side. And that's very dangerous.
For sure. Yeah, any other comments? And then I'll catch up with the chat. Okay, I won't say names from the chat just in case you wanted to remain anonymous. But very few schools have AI policies or standards and tools. Is resulting in teachers for students receiving not receiving any formal structured training. The Wild West is happening. The UK school system is still at ground zero with miles to go. And then in terms of content, I use it to generate course content. I see a Me Too there. Work with schools in Asia, the Middle East, and India. Okay, so making sure that schools have one specific learning model that they're very good at using, e.g. Copilot. Okay, a difference in people using AI for planning and not using it for planning. And working closely with an AI assessment tool for education is a startup company, but I like it. And I think it's very useful, which is why I agreed to be on board with it. Feel free to post it in the chat if you want to post a plug or a link there. And I think it might be good for checking for gaps in revision and as part of independent learning, but should not replace the social interaction that comes with learning with an adult. Yeah, interesting. I'd say a lot to digest there. Again, once the technology exists, it's going to start raising all sorts of questions in terms of how we use it, essentially. Okay. I do want to have an open discussion, so I'm conscious of time. I've got a few discussion points that I'd like to raise with you all, just to see how you feel. So, okay. So in terms of AI in education, where things stand in terms of it being an accurate prediction, a myth, a fact, it feels pretty subjective right now. So I'm going to pose a few ideas, and then we can see how we feel. So there's some hostility to the idea of AI-led education or AI-only education, but do we feel that the number of teachers required will lessen due to AI? Do we think it'll have that impact on the teaching profession where not as many teachers, potentially teaching assistants, are needed? Anyone got any thoughts on that? Go on, I know you're thinking about it. Let's see if the chat has any thoughts. So no, they still need physical interactions and to socialize. Possibly yes, to save money. Yeah. Yeah. We're definitely leaking teachers and leaking good teachers at that. It will do, as we've seen from the Chinese experience, but one of the most interesting parts of my lessons seems to get down to the interaction between me, the teacher, and the learners. 100%. 100%. I'd say that's how I feel also in terms of the balance of those three comments there. I don't think there'll ever be, it's me going out on a limb, but I don't think there'll ever be schools that are teacherless. I do think that the number of teachers in relation to class sizes, that may shift with a changing technology. I think in terms of cost efficiency, the role of the class teacher might resemble a bit more the role of the teaching assistant in terms of the way that a classroom works. I've also seen the comment, for some students, it could be amazing to have access to this, but not for the majority of the students. Yeah. I think the generation that we're talking about as well is interesting because, so there's a lot of learning theory about the gamification of education, it's called. So how much learning is now technology based. I haven't seen concrete data yet that compares solely technological learning, so children learning through technology, with children who are doing classroom learning. But as soon as one becomes more effective than the other, I think a conversation and shift is likely to happen at that point. All right, another topic. Using AI is cheating and unethical. I'll admit, I've used AI for maybe some ridiculous things at points, birthday cards, like all sorts, just to get the ideas out. So it's not, I'm not just like taking an AI script and just copying an AI script, but just to have some ideas. But I do feel a bit guilty and dirty afterwards. How do we feel? So we're not talking here about just whole pieces of text just being generated and submitted as our own, but the use of AI within education for potentially producing work and content. How do we feel about that in terms of a stance? Yeah, like I said, feel free to shout out. You don't have to type if shouting out is easier. Okay, I'll read some of the comments in the meantime. Modern learners are already sick and tired of staring into a screen, and it'll say they enjoy face-to-face lessons. Interesting. With AI classrooms, we have upped the game with teaching and how we use AI. On the back of the lad who took his, sorry, it went. On the back of the lad who took his life after talking to AI and not face to face with a trusted adult. Yeah, that was a crazy case. I feel guilty too. Feel like it may be numbing my creativity. Interesting. It is ridiculous when you receive a perfectly written email from a student that can hardly communicate in class. Like, did actually understand what they sent out. Okay, it's a huge time saver, but you need to use it carefully. Yeah, sometimes, yeah, we can put a bit too much chip on the dip, right? I feel like there has to be a leaning. I guess the question is, where is the line, essentially? So I've seen, by doing this and being exposed to different people, I'd say I've seen people where their prompt is longer than their actual text. So I've seen people write 2 pages of A4 for their prompt to go into, I think he was using Gemini at the time. So 2 sides of A4 is prompt to develop a 500-word piece. And like that raises a question in my mind. So it's not a lack of effort. It's not laziness. It's not a lack of ability. It's literally at that stage just being used as a tool for the output of ideas to be able to be structured in a particular way. Essentially, it feels like it's becoming a paintbrush at that stage. So it's interesting to me, those kind of cases. What else have we got? Absolutely agree and absolutely agree. Okay, got you. One more.
I have to say,
Go ahead.
At the beginning, I have to say, I felt more like cheating maybe 2 years ago when it was the beginning of especially ChatGPT. But right now, it's amazing, and the feedback that sometimes give you is so constructive that I think if we can merge and use it as a tool, is brilliant. But like somebody says, how much of our creativity is in hands of the AI simply because it will do it in 3 seconds instead of us writing for half an hour. So I think that's hard, but I would like to get to the point that is a tool.
Yeah, definitely valid. And I mean, to your point, if you spend a week, 2 months, 3 months, a year, 2 years training your AI module to be like you, how unethical is it then to ask it to produce something like you? So it depends on what I'm working on, because I think most of us will use AI in an educational context, but we'll now use it in a more general personal life context also. So there's times when I've trained it on my writing style. So I'll say, for example, for report writing. So I spent a long time training on my writing style. So I've uploaded loads of bits of extended text. I've anonymized previous reports and then submitted it in to analyze my writing style. I've given it positive and negative feedback on what it's produced, to the point where now, in terms of that project, it's pretty close to my writing style. All I want is to get my ideas out in a more efficient way that doesn't require me like tapping over and over. You know, so I'd say there's that issue of integrity.
I believe is helpful. It's like to have a tutor next to you telling you should use this or that. I don't know. At least I see it like that. Maybe it's not correct what I'm saying, but I see it more as a tool, other than please write me a paper about so and so.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the other thing, perception. So based on how you use AI defines what AI is for you. So if you're using it in the role of a tutor, then it becomes a tutor, which is why I'd say it's quite difficult to have one concrete definition that just sits, essentially. And I think, so we're limited in a couple elements. So 2025. So in the next couple of years, I'd say we're about to max out on AI progress, probably 2027 or so, based on the speed of acceleration we've been going at in terms of the processing capacity of the machines we have. We're going to hit a bit of a brick wall there. And in terms of the energy consumption, we're going to hit a bit of a brick wall there. The next frontier for me is localized AI. So rather than everyone sharing an AI model, us being able to host on a private server our own AI models, essentially, which will mean that things like the GDPR and those elements go away largely because it's not being shared to a cloud and that kind of thing. So those kind of moves are in the beginning stages. And when that happens and it's local to you, it becomes your personal AI, essentially, rather than this kind of en masse collective. Other things in the chat, I think sometimes it wastes my time because I could have just made a decision based on my own gut instinct rather than checking everything with AI. Interesting. I've seen a few funny videos like that where you have students being asked, "How are you?" and they reach to type it into ChatGPT, how am I, and that kind of thing. Yeah, interesting. How long have we got? 1 minute?
Can I just add in as well?
Go
just
on.
like everything everyone said is really good. Just like coming in from like a welfare point of view, which I'm really focusing on at the moment, like personally, is that, you know, the amount of teachers that are leaving, or professionals that are leaving the education system now because of time and burnout and all that kind of thing. And we want something that helps us to reduce that workload. And we've almost got it on our doorstep now. However, it is just a tool. You know, I've said numerous times to like colleagues and stuff, you won't expect a hammer to build the full door. It just helps you build the door. Like, it is only a tool. But I think schools need to almost pick a tool. I don't know, an AI tool, for example. Just thinking off the top of my head now, and you know, do it as like a as part of an inset or something like that, and say, right, this is what AI is capable of doing. How about, you know, you go away and find out what it can do and how it can help you, and then we'll come back almost like a working party. Because the school that I'm in and the school that I came from, having still like have that communication with them, so it's just almost shut down. They're not willing to open themselves up to as a like a wider kind of across departments. Yes, it might be one or two staff, but across departments, many shut it down. And it's like, well, this can save you time, but let me show you how it can save you time. Yes, in the first instance, it might take a little bit more time because you need to, like anything, you need to learn how to use it so that in the long run, it will save you time. It's like, you know, teaching the students how to answer a 12-mark question. Well, it's going to take them 15, 20 minutes to start with. But eventually, when they get to know how to do it and what things need to be put into that and how to learning how to answer that question, it becomes more efficient. And that's like AI, that, you know, we've got to learn how to use it and how to make the most of it in order to stop this burnout as much as possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I agree completely. The problem I think that will happen is it's either going to be Copilot or something really weird and extra GDPR safe. There's always these kind of constraints within education. I think healthcare is already ahead of us, and will stay ahead of us. Law is just a little bit ahead of us, and I think will accelerate away from us just based on funding. I think the more we can educate those in leadership, I think that will ultimately determine the pace that we're able to move at. But yeah, it always feels like we're about 10 years, and that's probably being nice. It feels like we're always about 10 years behind the outside world, just based on funding and such. But yeah, you guys, I like to be on time, and I'm seeing that it's 5 o'clock, so I'm going to pause there. I've dropped a little feedback form on there, so really useful for keeping in contact and just getting your insights. I'll say I got through about half the content that I had planned, so we can definitely do a follow-up one of these because it's been fun, and thank you guys for being so interactive as well and sharing your experience. It really makes for a richer meeting.